Have you ever faced a task so overwhelming that even thinking about it made you want to give up? You tell yourself, I'll start tomorrow, but tomorrow never comes. Arjun, a young man, stood at the base of an endless staircase. He looked up at the towering steps, muttered to himself, I'll do this tomorrow. He turned away, leaving behind the dreams he had yet to pursue. In his mind, the staircase seemed to stretch further and further out of reach. Arjun had always dreamed of becoming a renowned artist, but every time he tried to begin, he was haunted by negative thoughts. What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail? These thoughts built an invisible wall, blocking his every move forward. Days turned into weeks, and Arjun remained stuck, sitting in front of a blank canvas on his desk. He picked up his brush only to put it down again. Time slipped by quietly, leaving him with nothing but emptiness and regret. But the image of the staircase stayed in his mind, this time with a faint light glowing in the distance. It's time to change, he thought. If I don't take the first step now, I'll remain stuck forever. Arjun sat at his desk. In front of him lay a blank canvas, a palette of colors, and a paintbrush. He picked up the brush, his eyes fixed on the empty canvas. But instead of making the first stroke, his hand froze. Negative thoughts crept into his mind. What if I'm not good enough? What if this painting turns out to be a failure? He placed the brush back on the table with a heavy sigh. His eyes reflected hesitation, as if invisible chains of fear were binding him to his chair, holding him back from moving forward. Time slipped away unnoticed. The clock on his desk kept ticking, each tick a reminder of the days slipping by without progress. Yet Arjun couldn't muster the strength to take action. Leaning back in his chair, he gazed out of the window, lost in thought. In his mind, the endless staircase reappeared. This time, the steps seemed not only endless, but steeper and more intimidating. He felt small and powerless, standing at the base of an insurmountable mountain. Why can't I just start? He whispered to himself, but no answer came. Procrastination wasn't rest. It was a vicious cycle of fear and frustration. With every passing day, the weight of his inaction grew heavier. Arjun knew he needed to act, but the overwhelming sense of failure and doubt kept him rooted in place, letting his dreams drift further out of reach. Arjun couldn't escape the heavy weight of his thoughts. One day, tired of the cycle, he decided to take a walk to clear his mind. His feet instinctively led him to an old temple on the outskirts of town, a place he hadn't visited in years. As he approached, the sound of a gentle breeze rustling the leaves filled the air. At the temple gate, he saw an elderly monk sitting quietly under a large ancient tree. The monk's face was calm, his presence radiating a sense of peace. Arjun hesitated for a moment, but then approached. He blurted out, I don't know what to do. I have dreams, but every time I try to start, I feel like I can't. It's like I'm standing in front of a staircase that I'll never be able to climb. The monk opened his eyes slowly and looked at Arjun with a kind smile. He didn't respond immediately, but instead picked up a small, simple lantern beside him. Handing it to Arjun, he said, Take this lantern. Confused, Arjun held the lantern and looked back at the monk. How is this supposed to help me? He asked. The monk replied, You don't need to see the entire staircase. Just focus on lighting the step in front of you. One step at a time is all it takes. Arjun stared at the lantern, its small flame flickering but steady. For the first time in a while, a spark of hope lit up inside him. The staircase in his mind didn't seem so impossible anymore. Perhaps he didn't need to conquer it all at once. Perhaps all he needed was to take the first step. The monk added, Each step will bring you closer, but you must trust the process. Action, no matter how small, is what will move you forward. Arjun nodded slowly, clutching the lantern tighter. I'll try, he whispered, feeling the weight of his hesitation begin to lift. Arjun returned home that evening, the monk's lantern still in his hand. Placing it gently on his desk, he sat down and looked at the blank canvas. The monk's words echoed in his mind. You don't need to see the entire staircase. Just focus on lighting the step in front of you. He stared at the canvas for a moment. The doubts lingered, but the soft, steady flame of the lantern seemed to remind him that it was okay to start small. Taking a deep breath, he reached for the paintbrush. His hand trembled slightly as he dipped it into a vibrant blue paint. This time, he didn't think about the entire painting. He didn't worry if it would be perfect. He focused on making the first stroke. The brush touched the canvas, leaving a streak of blue across the white surface. It was a simple line, but to Arjun, it felt monumental. A sense of relief washed over him, like a heavy burden had been lifted. One step, he whispered to himself, as a small smile appeared on his face. As the days turned into weeks, Arjun's routine became steady and comforting. He no longer worried about the end result of the painting or the daunting staircase in his mind. Instead, he focused on the step in front of him. In his thoughts, the staircase began to transform. It no longer loomed over him like an insurmountable mountain. Each step became illuminated by the warm glow of the lantern. They were no longer intimidating, but inviting. Arjun began to see the staircase as a journey rather than a burden. One step at a time, he repeated to himself, a mantra that guided him through every stroke, every color, and every decision. The painting slowly came to life. What started as scattered lines and hesitant strokes transformed into a vibrant masterpiece, a reflection of Arjun's own journey from fear to confidence. He leaned back in his chair, smiling. The lantern's soft glow illuminated the painting, as if to remind him that even the smallest light could guide him through the darkest moments. The room was quiet except for the soft ticking of the clock. Arjun sat in front of the now completed painting, his brush resting in his hand. The canvas, once blank and daunting, was now alive with vibrant colors and intricate details, a masterpiece born from countless small, deliberate steps. He leaned back in his chair, gazing at the painting with a mix of pride and disbelief. The lantern's soft glow illuminated the artwork, casting warm shadows across the room. For the first time, he felt a deep sense of accomplishment. In his mind, the staircase reappeared, but it was no longer endless or intimidating. Instead, it felt like a familiar friend, a journey he had already conquered. Each step represented a moment of doubt overcome, a fear silenced, a victory earned. "I did it," he whispered to himself, a smile spreading across his face. As he sat there, he realized that the monk's words were true. It wasn't about seeing the entire staircase or rushing to the top. It was about trusting the process, taking one step at a time, and allowing progress to build upon itself. Arjun stood up, his posture confident, his steps deliberate. The weight of procrastination and fear had lifted, replaced by a newfound belief in himself. He looked at the lantern one last time and whispered, "Thank you." The lantern flickered for a moment, as if acknowledging his journey, before its flame steadied once again.